So the NBA trade deadline has come and gone. What's going on, Mr. Adidas? And the Pistons, it looked like they were going to stay pat for most of the day and most of the deadline. And then obviously they made a huge move trading away Andre Drummond, their franchise center, been here since he got drafted in like 2009. Quickly moving up the Pistons ranks in pretty much every statistic as well. And he's been here for, I know it seems like 10 years now. Maybe not 2009. Maybe I gave him a little bit too much credit. Really, regardless, it's a move that I think came there's a lot of people that are happy about it who just wanted Drummond gone. And then there are other people who saw the return that we got, which was Brandon Knight, John Henson, and then a second-round pick in 2023, which is like the worst of 2 second-round picks that they have, basically. And we're very underwhelmed by the return that Drummond was able to fetch us. And as far as just the trade goes in general, I think there's kind of a lot of debate to be had about it. You didn't really get anything for him, and the reason that the Pistons went ahead and made the move, I believe anyway, is there was still a possibility that Drummond was going to opt into his $28 million option next year, and the Pistons really just wanted to eliminate every way that could conceivably happen. So you trade for 2 expiring contracts that don't have the option to, opt in, and that you're not going to re-sign, and you guaranteed yourself to get your money off the books. And then it lets you see what you have in, some of the younger guys. This should open up, Christian Wood, obviously, to take over starting at center. And then towards the end of the year, I know Dwayne Casey just kind of threw him under the bus after last game, so maybe it won't happen as quickly. But I think, towards the end of the year, we'll be seeing that Christian Wood and Sekou Doumbouya pairing, just so the Pistons can kind of have an idea of what they have moving forward and what their front court's going to look like, which I'm a fan of that. Obviously, if you're going to make a move like trading Andre Drummond, that puts out any type of hopes that you had for the playoffs that the front office had. I know most of the fans didn't want them to make the playoffs anymore. So now, you just got to play the young guys and really see what you have, see what they're able to do, let them make their mistakes, and then let them learn how to, be consistent everyday players in the NBA, learn the routine and all of that, all that fun stuff that kind of comes along with, taking your lumps in the NBA, if you will. But as far as, this trade specifically, I think everybody wishes that they got more for Drummond, obviously. For me, one of the biggest questions I had is they had the talks with Atlanta before, maybe a month and a half ago, something like that. The timeline's a little funky. But they had their talks with Atlanta, and, it sounds like Atlanta didn't want the option for Drummond to just leave, but Atlanta got Clint Capella and they gave up Brooklyn's first-round pick and Evan Turner, which is a much higher return than what the Pistons were able to get for Andre Drummond. And Drummond, I don't know Capella's contract situation, which is probably what ended up, allowing Houston to get the return that Houston didn't get the return. I think Minnesota did for part of the 3-team deal. But it allowed essentially the return that Capella was able to fetch you be way higher than that of what Drummond got. And just being that was the team that was linked to Drummond first this year, at least, there's a lot of interest on my end. And if this was the best that you could do, it doesn't really excite me too much as far as the trade goes. I liked Andre Drummond as a player. I thought the Pistons should move on from him, but to get essentially nothing in return is a bit of a disappointment. But they really just wanted to, at least to me, what it seems like is they really wanted to, one, guarantee that they weren't going to have to pay him next year. Can't you quickly just? I guess I could. But this is line, man. Ain't no ending afterwards. Capella contract. But they really just wanted to get him off the books. And then they also to play Christian Wood, play Sekou together, so that way you understand what you have kind of in the next generation coming up, if you will. So it looks like Capela's contract is $90 million over 5 years, and I think we've already gotten a year of that. So Capela is maybe is at like 4 years, $75 million. Somewhere around there left on his deal. So Atlanta knows that they have him. Second rounders are valuable. This second rounder is not valuable, and typically second rounders aren't valuable in the NBA anyway. As far as this one specifically, they have, I think it's Houston, and I want to say it's Houston and the Rockets. That Cleveland has 2 of those second round picks, and then whichever one is worse, so further down the draft board, closer to 60, which would be the last pick of the draft, that's the one the Pistons are going to get, and that doesn't even kick in until 2023. So it's a second round draft pick, a low second round draft pick in 3 years that the Pistons are getting for Drummond. So again, for them, it wasn't really about the return. It was just about getting Drummond off of the books and not even, having the possibility essentially of paying him next year. And it's definitely a pro-tank move for the Pistons to do it. There was another report that said they might buy out Reggie Jackson from his contract because there's not. And if they did that, that would be like the super tank move, right? Because, I mean, having Reggie Jackson on your team now, the only thing that it does benefit you in is winning. So if the Pistons bottom out, it's a move strictly to just lose more games. Because at this point with him expiring, whether you buy him out or whether you let the contract just go off the books at the end of the year, there's no difference, salary cap wise. So the only thing that they would be doing is to lose more games and then get, more ping pong balls in the lottery. Jason says, one trade only, so disappointed. That was the other thing that I wanted to touch on in this video, and I'm glad you brought it up. As far as the other trades go, it seemed like their asking price for Derrick Rose, it was reported they asked for a lottery pick. I assume that was just something where you put that out there and then teams know you want a lottery pick, so you're hoping that they offer you something less, which is what you would really want, like the 20th pick or 30th pick or something like that in the draft, just a later first-round pick. But I also think that the Pistons understand that there's value to be had in Derrick Rose still. So with Derrick Rose, kind of only with Derrick Rose specifically, and maybe even Luke Kennard a little bit, because you didn't trade Markieff Morris, who is gone after this year. You didn't trade Langston Galloway, who is gone after this year. But with Luke Kennard and Derrick Rose specifically, who have years on their contract after this one is up, you can still trade guys in the offseason. So closer to the draft, my guess is that that's something that they explore. It's not to obviously say I'm guaranteeing the Pistons make a move or anything, but you have the offseason, you have the draft to, kind of let teams see how things play out. Things are kind of constantly changing in the NBA. So if a superstar or even just a player does become available and a team's relationship with them is soured and it's somebody that you can get Derrick Rose for, or maybe if it's even a player good enough where you're giving up Derrick Rose and your first-round pick, or Luke Kennard and your first-round pick that you have in this draft. If it's in the top 8 is probably where they'd fall right now. Top 10, kind of somewhere around there. I do think that there's still value to be had in having those players on your board, where the value would be more than giving them to the Lakers or the Clippers or whoever for a very low second-round pick this year, or even like you saw with Andre Drummond getting a second-round pick, 3 years from now. So in that aspect, I'm not super upset that they didn't move Derrick Rose, that they didn't move Luke Kennard. I don't understand not moving Markieff Morris. Maybe there just wasn't a big, market for him. Obviously, people wanted his brother is, kind of who you heard getting brought up and eventually did get traded. in a lot of the talks. Andre Iguodala. So there were other guys who were kind of fitting that Markieff Morris role, if you will, who were just better at doing those certain things than Markieff Morris was. And unfortunately for the Pistons, it made teams not eager, it sounds like, to bid on the services of Mr. Morris for us. And then maybe the same thing even with Langston Galloway. So the Sixers seemed like a team that made a lot of sense because they needed some outside shooting, but then they went and got Glenn Robinson III and Alec Burks from Golden State, so that crossed them off the list. And it's just, you saw guys who, while Markieff and Langston could fill roles for teams, I don't think it's necessarily like a black mark on the Pistons that they weren't able to move them, because you have to still keep in mind the Pistons aren't the only team in the league that are looking to trade pieces. They're not the only team, obviously, that has players. So if there is a better version of Langston Galloway out there, a team is more inclined to look at them than they are to look at, your discounted version of whatever player, they really wanted, or they really went and ended up getting. Tim says they should have kept Tobias Harris. The Blake trade blew up in our face. Maybe, but it's not. It's still not even like Tobias is on the team that we traded, that we traded him to. He obviously went over to the Sixers, and then he got a big contract with them. And as far as everything else, the only reason that, I think you could say we lost the Blake trade is that pick turned into Shai Gilgeous-Alexander, who, he's on the Thunder now, but even with the Clippers, he was, playing really well. He's playing great this year with Chris Paul by his side. But as far as, Shai and the Pistons and that pick, there's no guarantee that that's who the Pistons would have taken anyway. I don't know who else was taken off the top of my head, like around that pick, but there's no guarantee that that's who the Pistons select. And you wouldn't have essentially him guaranteed. And I mean, obviously Blake played well for the Pistons. It blew up in our face because he got hurt. But I don't think Tobias Harris is, like the guy that, you should pay, or they give him $180 million or something. I don't think that was a good idea, and I don't think anybody that we traded the Clippers at that time is still on the Clippers, because they've made a ton of moves, obviously, since they got rid of Blake Griffin. So I don't necessarily know that we quote unquote lost that trade. It did blow up in our face, mainly due to Blake Griffin being hurt. But I don't know that keeping Tobias Harris puts us in any better situation today than it did back then. We just got ripped off. The Cavs literally admitted it. Yeah. I mean, as far as, definitely value, the Pistons didn't get any for Andre Drummond. The value to them is not having to pay him in the future, which if your team tank and your team lose as many games as possible, then that should be value to you as well, because getting rid of Andre Drummond and only getting back John Henson and Brandon Knight as far as on the court performance goes, then this absolutely unequivocally, kind of indebatably, whatever, inarguably, basically helps the Pistons lose more games, which again gives them higher odds in the lottery to get the number 1 pick, number 2 pick, number 3 pick. So it helps them in that aspect, which is where all of their value comes from. But if you're just looking at like a player on player comparison, yeah, they didn't get nearly anything back from the Cavs. They didn't get any of their young players, whether it was Sexton or Garland, even Kevin Porter Jr. They didn't get anybody back from the Cavs like that that you could even think of as like trying to save and trying to develop or something like that into a player like you got with even Shvee last year, where you got him and you thought, hey, maybe we can develop this kid. And right now it looks like they're doing a pretty good job of that. And from the Cavs, you didn't get that. It's a total rebuild. Dre had to go. I think it'll be really interesting to see if it's a total rebuild, to see what happens with Reggie Jackson, because if they let Reggie Jackson stay on the team for whatever reason at this point. I don't know why you wouldn't buy him out. I really don't know why you wouldn't buy Reggie Jackson out at this point. But if you did buy out Reggie Jackson, then it's a total rebuild. But I would also maybe even caution you, because what I could see the Pistons looking at in the future being as kind of close as next year, is you obviously have Blake Griffin coming back. You have Christian Wood, who you assume is going to be the starting center. So now instead of Blake and Andre, where one is inside and one is outside, and Blake playing outside, not really that effective. He can shoot the three, kind of, but he shoots a lot of them. And to shoot a lot of them, he doesn't really make a lot of them, but he has the ability. But now if you have Blake at the 4 and then Wood at the 5, you have a way better ability to space the floor. And, couple that with Luke, who obviously can shoot as well. And then if you put Sekou at, say you put Sekou at the 3, who's shown sort of an ability to knock down the shots. And then say they go and try and add a guy like Fred VanVleet in free agency. Now you got 5 dudes who can all kind of shoot a little bit, and like 3 of those dudes that can shoot the ball really well. So I wouldn't be surprised if you, in the offseason, you see moves for the Pistons that that help them try and win next year, which is, another reason why I think they were so high on their asking price of Derrick Rose, is because they understood, one, they could move him this offseason still. But he obviously has a 2-year contract, so he's contractually obligated to the Pistons next year. And if it's a situation where, again, Blake's health picks up and they like what they have as far as their starting 5 goes, you have Derrick Rose that come on as that 6th man. And then I think they'll kind of go back in the mindset of this is a team that can make the playoffs. And if they feel like they can make the playoffs, from what we've seen from this front office, and maybe the Andre Drummond move changed it, I don't think it changed the whole mentality. But if they see an opportunity to make the playoffs, especially if Sekou is starting, especially if Luke is starting, I think that's an opportunity that they're going to go ahead and jump at to try and get those guys part of like the winning culture, if you will. LeRon says they let him walk for nothing then. So just let him walk for nothing then. I think he means Andre. No, they didn't, but at the same time they did. Like I said, they got a 2nd-round pick in 3 years, and then they got the peace of mind that no matter what, they don't have to pay Andre Drummond next year. And it's obviously not a guarantee he would opt in, but there was always the option, and it was probably a higher percentage than the Pistons felt comfortable with. Because you don't imagine that Andre. I don't think there's any way that Drummond would get more money than what he's even making this year, which I think is like 27 million or something like that. I don't think on a yearly basis he's going to get that much in free agency, but I could see him opting out for something longer term. We'll say it's 25 million or 100 million over 4 years, which is 25 million a year, while it's less yearly. If he got that security, I think that's probably something that he'd jump at. But if he's not getting that, and guys and teams are only offering him like 2-year deals, or maybe even like a 3-year deal or something like that, I think there was a higher percentage than maybe people wanted to admit that Drummond wanted to opt back in, and the Pistons obviously didn't want any part of that. It was a pure cash dump, and I'm fine with it. He wasn't going to stay in Detroit, and if he did, it would have been a $20 million cap hit. Yep, pretty much. There was no market for Dre. He got what they could. There was a market with Atlanta. It just sounded like the Pistons were, or they couldn't. The Hawks didn't like the uncertainty of Andre Drummond only having this year guaranteed, basically. Not total rebuild. We still have Blake. Well, you weren't going to trade freshly off of surgery Blake Griffin, who stands to make, I think, $40 million next year or something crazy like that. Maybe a little bit less, but it's really close to 40 million. There was no way that they were going to trade Blake. Blake isn't going to be healthy. Might be time to move on from him too. I mean, I'm sure they want to, but again, with him just coming off of surgery, you would have to give assets back for a team to take on Blake Griffin's contract. Like, you would have to give up future first-round picks for a team to say, okay, we'll take Blake Griffin. Will you get out of here, man? Or at least just stay off the screen. You stay there so I can pet you. Not to fire Casey. Well, what do you want to fire Casey for? I think what you brought on Casey, and I have heard some Dwayne Casey hate, so it's not specific to you, Wesley. But with Dwayne Casey, what you got him for was, the development, right? And I think it's safe to say that Luke Kennard has become a better player under Dwayne Casey. Svi Mykhailiuk has definitely become a better player under Dwayne Casey. Christian Wood has become a better player under Dwayne Casey. Bruce Brown too. So you have these young guys who are developing, and because Dwayne Casey is not, he's not winning right now, obviously, because of the roster constructed and the injuries that hit the Pistons. I think he's a guy that you feel good about having your young guys around. And you can tell he holds them accountable. You might think he may even be a little bit too hard on them. So I don't know if you guys watched the game yesterday, but in the post game, it was a game that the Pistons won too. But in the post game, he talked about, I think it was Jordan Bone, Louis King, and then Sekou Doumbouya. And he didn't like their energy, and he made sure to let everybody know that he didn't like their energy afterwards. And it was made a threat to them. If you guys play like that again, you'd be on the next bus down to Grand Rapids or something like that. So, you can tell that he gets the young players to respond to him based on the 4 or 5 cases that we have of guys having career years and getting better even from last year. Obviously Dwayne Casey's first year here. And you can tell that he holds them, accountable, and he's not playing, favorites with the young guys or anything like that. The cat has more game than anybody on the Pistons. I bet he's quicker. He's got some hops too, don't you? Hey, man. But I'll let the Pistons know now. If you guys do buy anybody out, I got a free agent cat right here. His name is Adidas, so you know that he can ball. And I mean, we'll just take the minimum. You don't even have to give us multi-year contract. If you guys just want to play out the rest of the year at a cool $425,000, I'll go ahead and negotiate with you. Sekou is going to be good also. I mean, I think so too. And that's another thing that, again, this trade, I think, allows. It'd be a little bit more clear path if they did get rid of, Marcus Morris, who obviously or Markieff Morris, who plays, the same position basically that Sekou does. And not that they don't play on the court together, they do. But if you got rid of him, your bigs would essentially be Christian Wood, Sekou Doumbouya, and Louis King. But that's what trading Drummond does, is it opens up the opportunity to definitely get Christian Wood on the floor more. But it also just allows the ability for Sekou and Wood to play together, learn how to play off each other. And then if this is your future front court, or even at least your future for the next 2 or 3 years before you decide you want to move one of them for a bigger name or something like that. I think it gives you the opportunity to do that, which is probably the brightest silver lining, if you will, in the entire trade and the entire kind of moves or even non-moves that the Pistons ended up making at the trade deadline. I think that's pretty much what we have for now. I said all that I want to say on it, and my cat over here is getting restless. He knows we're talking about Andre Drummond, and I don't know, maybe he wants to attack or something. But as far as I go, I'm Ryan with the Sports Carnage Podcast. I'm sure we're going to talk more about the Pistons and the NBA trade deadline as a whole on our next Sports Carnage that drops. There's going to be one coming out today, probably. And then there's going to be one coming out next Thursday that we still have to record, but there's definitely going to be NBA trade deadline talk on it. So make sure you listen to that, and make sure you're obviously keeping up with Detroit Sports Nation for all of our news. I don't know where you saw the Andre Drummond news first, but I know we at DSN had it up, quick as could be for you, just because we love you guys like that. So hopefully you have your notifications turned on for when DSN does post. And then make sure you like the Sports Carnage podcast, link in the description there. It'll take you right to our Facebook page, and then you can find us on Twitter as well at Sports Carnage podcast. And if you guys do already listen, thank you. And if you are new and your next episode is going to be the first that you listen to, thank you as well. And then you know my voice, you just hear me, match me, boom, that's Ryan Griffin right there. And then we have 3 other guys that are usually on the podcast as well, and it's a very good time. So make sure you check that out. Thank you guys for joining me today. And then you can also find us on YouTube, which is at Sports Carnage Podcast, where you can see this video after it's been uploaded. Thank you. And